time to bring in our good friends from the Lakeville Journal. We'll switch on the mics in there, and we say good morning, first of all.
Good morning.
Cynthia, and Ann is here.
Ann is here.
Good morning, Ann.
Not only is she there, she's early. She was not
early.
expected, but that she's early.
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 I like an earlier person, all right.
We're having fun reading the inserts in here to the Lakeville Journal, which are very interesting.
All right, well, I have to mention, I love seeing the bat on the front page.
Me too.
But
Me too.
Yeah, everybody does. I guess you guys don't like have bats at your house. I guess that's why you like
I
it.
love bats.
Bats
Bats mean
are,
rebirth.
bats are
They're
a
very
good thing.
magical.
Bats are a very
We
good
need
thing.
more bats.
Apparently, the bat colony collapse seems to have ended. Somebody was saying, oh, actually, maybe it's Bernie who says it in here. But apparently the bats are back, which is good.
My mother knew that I was, as at a young age, I was petrified of insects and wasps. They built bat houses around the house.
Oh.
And the insect population around the house dropped considerably. Occasionally a bat got in the house, yes. And
Yeah.
it was hilarious with the fishnet.
Yeah.
But other than that,
When we
bats-
lived across the street here from the radio station, we had bats in the house all the time. My daughter grew up terrified of bats
All
because
right,
they'd
now
always be
Marshall
in her
has to tell
bedroom.
the bat story.
It's here. I have to
Yeah.
tell two bat stories, and then we'll get
Only two?
Two. First of all, when we first moved into this building, next to Town Hall had just been painted by Bobby Thompson. They removed all the shingles and everything. All the bats moved to this building.
Oh, man.
So what we did is we removed all the shingles, and all the bats moved back over to Town Hall.
That's a lot of work.
It was
Worth it.
But then
he-
then Dick Herman's worked does the show here. One night he came in before we had animals here and decided it was a beautiful night.
This was
He'd
way
leave
back
the-
in WKZE.
He'd
days.
leave the door open.
Oh,
I
no.
came in the morning, and there were literally 50 bats flying
disgusting.
around. And we missed one, which finally died up in the corner and was kind of encased by the time we found it like 3 months later. But we caught all the rest with a cake top and a cake plate.
That is impressive.
Yeah, it was
That's a
scary.
good story. 50.
Well, anyways, we'll stop talking about bats and bring in Janet.
Only you.
Hi,
Good morning,
Janet.
Janet.
Good morning. Well, this is great reason to read Bernie Drew's Nature's Notebook this week.
There we go. We
Yeah, in case you're
highlighted
wondering
it.
what we're talking about.
Because you too can have bat stories.
All right. We'll go on to the story on the maternity plans. There's clarity that's coming on the maternity plans. In my opinion, the clarity is that sooner or later there won't be maternity.
Yeah, it seems like that's a very hard message for people to hear, but I would say pretty much from all of the people at Sharon OBGYN at the hospital, they keep sort of saying, yeah, there's really not much future here. They're not saying like we're going to close it tomorrow, or even, I think Peter Cordeaux said they have a schedule through the end of October, but it doesn't sound like there's much of a happy valley ahead. And I think that people are having a really hard time hearing that and accepting it. So this is a difficult time, and it's a complex story. I think we must have changed the story 5 times after the meeting was over in Sharon last week. Bob Schnurr, who is the head of Sharon OBGYN and is retiring, much to my chagrin, was there and really kind of kept there was nobody there from HealthQuest, but Janet had been at a prior meeting where Peter Cordeaux had said the same thing, which is, really there's no real future for a maternity unit in this area. And the care is, people need to start thinking about other options for the future.
All right. So, that story is front right on the front, right next to a great picture about the first Kent Carnival. And you're always leery because carnivals. We used to have lots of carnivals around here, but they died out because people just didn't want to work them.
I'll disagree with that. I think that a lot of the reason why the carnivals died out, especially the firemen's carnivals, was that when the Schaghticoke and, when all the casinos were coming up and the Schaghticoke were trying to get their casino approved for Connecticut, the state changed its gambling laws and they couldn't have a lot of the games of chance that they used to have that were a big fundraiser for them. So that you couldn't have, like Falls Village had the best little firemen's carnival, but they couldn't, there was no point in doing it because they couldn't raise any money
Falls
anymore.
Village stopped because they couldn't sell beer.
And that's the other
That
side
was
of
a
it,
big-
too.
yeah, that was a big
that
thing,
was
too.
a big insurance
Yeah.
issue.
Beer.
Right.
That was a
Drink
big
beer
deal.
and
But
play
the-
the wheel.
But
Beer.
the,
The beer and the wheel made money.
Right.
but that's the deal. That's used to be what you could do, and now it's
Well, the Kent Carnival is back first time, and it was
That's
a big
right.
success.
All things.
Yeah, they found a formula.
Yeah.
So that's
So the
nice.
Kent Carnival was great, and Lance Christensen, who is a super talented photographer, we're lucky to have him shooting for us, went and of course just took incredible photos. This was an issue where it would have been great if we could have had 100 pages of color. every photo we got was incredible from everybody that shot for us. And the Kent Carnival was one of 3 fairs that we've covered in this issue.
The Goshen Fair, of course.
Goshen Fair and the Colebrook Fair. We have great coverage on all of them. But Lance did a really nice job covering this one. And a lot, you never quite know. It's like the first time that they have a carnival. You don't know if 6 people are going to show up or if nobody's going to show up.
Whole thing, yeah.
This one was huge, and it sounds like it's definitely going to happen again. And it was put on by the Kent Memorial Library to replace their Fireman's Fair, which used to go for 3 days. And they said, let's try to be a little more moderate. We'll do 4 hours instead.
And the story, which looks like a small story, but it continues inside, the accreditation for Housatonic renewed for 10 years. The amazing thing when you read that from end to end, and it's a long thing, is that there's a lot of great things going on at the school, which we all know.
Which we forget, and we forget to mention it.
And the 2 things that the accreditation people mentioned that were negatives really didn't have to do with the school, had to do with the communication with the Board of Education.
Right.
And with the administration. And that hit the nail right on the head. There's a lot of great things going on at that school.
Yes, I think that Janet and I both feel strongly it's important for us to constantly remember. And people tend to read the paper and they tend not to sort of see all the great, the science fair and the robotics team and all, the sports, the music, all these great things that are happening there. So it's very important to remember how great that is.
And we do have good teachers. It really is. The problems, and that they zeroed in on it exactly, which was amazing for me to see.
So we also had we held over a story that Patrick did on the talk by Dr. Gusky last week, which Patrick said was actually a very good talk. But he does, Marshall had said to me, I wonder how much these people are getting paid to come in and do these talks. So Patrick actually does have the figures on that, and that will be in next week's issue, the issue of the September 13th. We felt that the fairs really, needed to go in this week, and so we erred on the side of running the fairs and holding that.
Well, good, because we can talk about that next week.
But also I want to talk about Maury Collerton, who wrote about the Goshen Fair for us and took phenomenal photos, and talk about the success stories of the Housatonic Region 1 high school system. Maury and her 2 sisters, they're triplets. They were the number 1, 2, and 3 students in their class. She's a longtime Lakeville Journal intern. She is a phenomenally good writer and a great photographer, and she and the 3 of them all are at UConn, and all 3 of them joined the timber team, which is really hilarious. But this article reminds us all, when I go to Goshen Fair, I tend to go to, I like to see the giant vegetables, and I like to see the kids in the dairy barn, and my daughter likes to go to the little tents with all the tacky stuff for sale. But Maury reminds us in this article there are all these weird competitions, and that's one of the nice things about the Goshen Fair is it's a legit fair. It's not like, we don't have carnies coming in from these are local people.
It's an agricultural fair.
Right. And so you have local people, and she explains some of these really weird competitions they have, like the beef cattle obstacle course. And the timber throwing, which of course she knows a lot about now because she's on the timber team. But great photos from her and a really funny, interesting story. You should definitely, if you live up here, you need to read the story because you will learn about your area.
All right. Inside, you've got a story about the new leader of the Housatonic Youth Service Bureau.
Right, which is a very important local organization. Cynthia Bianchi was the head for many, many years, retired. Nick Pohl took over, did a lot for them. Nick's still in the region living in Great Barrington, but they have a new head who just started. And what YSB does is, under Cynthia Bianchi, it was a lot of sort of educational programs, a lot about teaching parents how to parent. Under Nick, it was a lot about, making mental health care available for people in the area and helping fight drug addiction. So it'll be interesting to see what this new Lori Collins, what her priorities are going to be. And we have a column from Dan Pelberg, who's been doing stories on business for us, autonomous vehicles. I just want to say, how many times have you tried to explain to a parent or an older person how to use the remote control on their television? I just want to say that's...
on the Car Keys with Robin Leach and Jay DeMarkin, we talk about autonomous vehicles all the time, the pros and the cons, and there's a lot of cons.
Right.
But, what Dan points out is it sounds scary, but it's like with air travel. You feel like every time there's a plane crash, you think, oh, it's so dangerous. But there's a lot of planes that go up and nothing ever happens. So Dan's saying, there's a lot of car crashes with people driving that you don't necessarily think about. And he said, there will still be car crashes with autonomous cars. There will be fewer.
All right. The Bend. The Bend is approved.
This is a big deal.
Yeah.
So there's the Bend in the Housatonic River near Cornwall, near West Cornwall. And the Housatonic Valley Association, which is an organization that has been tasked with protecting the shores of the river, as opposed to the Housatonic River Commission, which protects the water, has been working, and this is an outgrowth of the Pittsfield GE money, to put in some what really are protective measures at the Bend, which is a popular viewing spot. So there would be some bathrooms there and some parking. So that passed at the town meeting. The plan, I believe they still have to be passed by the final step in the approvals is for the Houstonic River Commission. So it's possible that this plan could still be stopped before it comes to fruition. But I think that generally the HVA and the Houstonic River Commission talk to each other. So.
And I didn't think about this, but when David Sellery announced he was leaving the area, his wife
is leaving.
His wife is leaving with him.
You bet.
So Cornwall needs a social services
Yeah,
director.
so David Sellery has been reassigned. We had a story on that, I think last week or the week before. And Jane Sellery, who's a very interesting person and is a genealogist and had been the social services head in Cornwall, of course, will leave and travel with her husband. So they're looking for a new social services head. That's a very big job around here. It's a part-time paid position, but all of the towns are constantly saying, we really need more hours for that. There's a lot of people who are at risk in our areas.
All right, a nice story by Shaw Ice Cream in Winstead, the 5th anniversary of the Ice Cream Man store.
And you know why the story is important? Because I will tell you why. Just because Labor Day is over, it doesn't mean summer is over. Summer's over when I say it's over. And that will be in roughly January. So you just keep eating ice cream.
All right, now this is a story that I really back because I've used the track several times. It's almost done. What they've done at Veterans Field in Sharon
It's coming together.
is one of the nicest community fields you're going to see in any town in the state. It's got a regulation size, I mean a professional size fenced-in baseball field, a terrific Little League field, a pavilion, a beautiful soccer
bathrooms, which is a
area,
big improvement.
and they have now a walking track, which is about halfway around it.
Yeah.
And they want to finish it, and I just think I think voters should definitely approve this.
And part of the reason why this track came to life is Matt Meddy, who's the head of recreation in the town for many, many years, really knows like what people want here because he's been doing it for so long, and he's got enough sort of cred in the town to be able to get something like this done. So little by little, they're building this walking track. And the reason why he knows it's really desired is he is the person who helps organize the indoor walking in winter at Hotchkiss. So he knows people really wanted this track, and he's making sure that they get it. So do go to vote September 21st to approve those funds for him.
But there's so many people that don't realize what an unbelievable community asset that Veterans Field has become. And it's beautifully maintained. Fred Amerighi must be smiling up above because
there's a lot there. There's tennis courts. There's a fishing pond.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go on to see the story by in Sharon how to help forests thrive.
I see Jim Gillespie all the time. He used to be on Inland Wetlands. Very nice man. Always kind of, he's like out all the time. He's at like art openings. He's at Moonlight or Porchlight having, cocktails. He's such a nice man. And who knew? He's got this incredibly fascinating forest going on. He was a forester from the 80s. He took over the property himself in the 90s, and he's doing this very cutting edge, interesting stuff. So he did a tour of the forest. Leela Hawken went very impressed with it. It describes it in great detail here. A really interesting story.
And there's a great story on Camp Sloan. For someone who lives around here all the time, I used to only know Camp Sloan from when they used to have that party with the Outer Space Band, and they used to do a big, huge party there.
Which isn't their party. That's the Elliot Osborne.
I know, it's Elliot Osborne, but it was there. But what a great 90 years it's been around.
Well, of course, Janet and I know Camp Sloan because our kids took ballet there, and they went to camp there at the Camp Sloan YMCA. Fantastic camp. I believe Camp Sloan, the head of Camp Sloan, is always a very active part of the Rotary around here. Bear Bryant is the head of it now, and they had a dinner on September 2nd, I believe, where people came back and shared stories, and it's a wonderful resource for people. When my daughter was under 10 years old, we had a Japanese girl come and stay with us for one summer because she'd come all the way from Japan to go to Camp Sloan. I mean, that's great.
All right, a nice story on the Colebrook Frog Contest.
It's the funniest story ever. Deb Alexinas, who's a new writer for us, did a fantastic, really funny story. And I love frog jumping contests. To me, they're like so weird and quirky. They're like the cow poop contest in Cornwall. They're just hilarious. And she did the funniest story where she really takes you inside and backstage on what a frog contest involved, but also great photos. And this beautiful little freckly creature named Sarah Berry not only won the frog jumping contest, but best photo ever of a little girl holding a chicken.
Now you've got a story on the Bugattis at Lime Rock Park, and Skip Barber allowed us to set up a vintage tent at the Vintage Festival to go along with their vintage hat contest. And you know what? It made us a lot of money for Tri-State Public Communications.
Oh, wonderful.
But this is what Lime Rock does with its facility. And it took like 3 seconds when I asked for them to say yes. And yes,
they're very
you
generous.
see all the Bugattis and you see all the racing, but they're very, very gracious to help not-for-profits in the area.
Was that Liz Cuoco selling the vintage clothes for you?
Yeah, Liz and Maddie, we call them the NPR gals.
Yeah, Liz is the best stylist. She's always giving my daughter her cast-off clothes, and I'm always like, I get to look at those first. I actually
Amazing.
She's got great taste. So we have two stories, one by Patrick Sullivan about the fantastic parade that rolled through town last Thursday evening, and then ended up with a ever-growing, ever more famous party afterward in the center of town, Falls Village becoming Party Central. But also Rick Rosso, who used to be the marketing director for many years for Lime Rock and is a super funny writer, really explains like what was happening there in a nice, concise fashion. And of course, all of my photographers love to go to the historic festival. Great photos from Tom Brown and Lance Christensen of some of these incredible, extraordinary machines. And speaking of extraordinary machines, don't forget, coming up end of September, the Power Down at the Antique Machinery in Kent.
All right. So we go to the editorial page. Big editorial, Wounds in Need of Healing, Janet.
Yeah, this is in relation to the report that was put out by the Hotchkiss School and other allegations of pedophilia in Salisbury, the Recreation Department in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And, you know, it's something that's hard to talk about that needs to be talked about and needs attention. And it's interesting to me that I've had lots of discussions with people about, you know, especially the report after it was released and the people in the community who were named, et cetera, and people saying that, you know, that's just how it was back then. Well, I have to say that there were lots of moral and ethical and caring, you know, educators, coaches, leaders who were not abusing children. And certainly at that time, nobody knew in the general public that this was happening, or, you know, people wouldn't have been participating in these programs and something would have happened. However, here we are all these years later, and there's a reason why it takes so long for victims to speak out, and we discuss that, and we look for any further discussion on it in our pages.
It's just a great it's a great editorial, and I think one of the questions people always raise is, well, how come it took somebody 40 years, or how come it took somebody 20? There's a ton of reasons why these things happen. I think that editorial will start a community discussion, hopefully.
I hope so.
I want to go to another letter that Lindsay Anderson about HealthQuest patient care inconvenience.
Right. She visited Sharon Hospital with her son just to have an X-ray, and it was a prearranged appointment. She describes the process, and she wanted to be very clear that it wasn't the staff at Sharon Hospital. It was that, you know, that she has only the greatest respect for them. It's the process that finally drove them away, and you'll have to read what happened.
All right, I have to go on the variation of the Mulligan Burger from Lynn Kircher.
Yes.
I worked with Dick. Dick was friends of the family. We've known the family. We had a place. We actually ran a place, Dick and my mother, in Great Barrington, and I worked in the kitchen with him for 2 summers. And this is great to see this letter about the Mulligan Burger and how it originally started.
Originally started. It's just great that, you know, something like a specific kind of burger can, you know, elicit so many memories. So we're happy to have this from Lynn Kircher, who, yes, her dad preceded the Knowltons and at the Woodland. And so, you know, it's just so interesting to see the differences and try her recipe too, even though she doesn't give exact quantities. I think we can figure it out. And what the heck, it's fun to have 2 different burgers to go with.
There would be a great TV sitcom for my 2 years with Dick, who is a great guy in the kitchen, but we won't go into that. Viewpoint page, once again, Peter Steiner hits it on the head. Yes.
Peter Steiner, a great cartoon. We have an interesting piece from Ralph Nader about the 15 ways the Democrats could lose the November election. And Tony Peel in the third of a 4-part series on the war on democracy in America. And John Swan, a very interesting piece about transportation and how it affects our environment.
All right, now we only have about 3 minutes left, so Cynthia, I'll let you talk about pesto, and then we'll go on, of course, to compass.
Well, in a sense, pesto is an introduction to compass because I just keep getting my freaking friend Tina's mom's pasta recipe wrong. So, but I've made a ton of it. It's fantastic. It's really delicious, really easy to make. So I've recapped it a little bit here and also talked about how to store your Parmesan cheese because at this time of year we're all grating Parmesan cheese like crazy. But I also tried to redo Mafalda's tomato sauce recipe, which is explained at length in Compass. This week I have an article that Anne allowed me to write about how to store your tomatoes because it's that time of year. But if you have to take a little bit of the recipe that's in Compass and combine it with a little bit of the recipe that's on the health page. Anne, take it away.
Okay. So tomatoes are or tomatoes.
Sorry,
You
potatoes.
say tomato.
I grew up I was forced to say tomato.
Let's call the whole thing off.
I put them in the vase.
Anyway, but I'm going to say tomato now. So that's the cover story, is How to Harvest and Save Your Summer Tomatoes by Cynthia Hochschwender. Listen, if you want to buy them today. I mean,
Yeah.
You can go to Charlie Paley's. They have big flats of gorgeous, gorgeous tomatoes, but you got to buy them soon.
Yeah.
And then you can follow our instructions on how to save them to use all winter. We've got a lovely show at Argosy, a painter called Richard Siegelman, who's 85 years old, resisted the call of abstract expressionism and paints these impressionistic pictures of women in white. I wrote a story
So I want to see this. I want you to talk about this one.
about Richard Siegelman or
Yeah.
Omarosa.
No, I'm
Omarosa.
Yeah, okay, so
The
I
first
wrote
story
this
everyone's gonna
story.
read.
I must pat myself on the back. It was quite prescient because everything she says towards the end of her book is what was in the anonymous op-ed piece that ran in the Times yesterday. She ended her book by saying there are a group of people inside the White House who are dedicated to protecting the country from Donald Trump and trying to thwart his efforts to destroy things. That's her opinion, and that's the opinion of the op-ed writer. And I don't think she was the op-ed writer because
She's not a senior administration.
exactly, and she's not afraid of losing her job because she already lost it.
Many
But
times.
here's the thing. This is an audiobook review because I listened to it. She has a lovely speaking voice. I've never watched the TV program she was on with Donald Trump, so I'd never hated her or loved her. She's called the woman America loves to hate. But I didn't have any of those feelings about her. I have a feeling from reading the book that there's a lot of exaggeration. But don't worry about it because she's a nice reader and you can just relax while you listen to her.
All right, we have 1 minute left.
Okay, we have a review of a fantastic movie which is now playing at the movie house called The Wife, Glenn Close, Jonathan Pryce. We have, I think, an important thing is saving seeds, and anybody can do it, and you'll be able to grow things that you might not be able to buy in your local nursery. If you see seeds of a plant you like, you can save the seeds and try to grow them on your own. Then we have a preview of the Clarion concerts, which are in Hudson, and they're this fall, starting on September 15th. And I think that's it, right?
That is it because we are actually over time, but it was worth it because there were a lot of fun things in this.
And there's
it's a fun
even more
paper.
than what we talked about.
All right. You can always find everything at, of course, online, tricornernews.com, on Facebook, and also, hey, the old-fashioned way, buy the damn paper. Okay.
Thank
Heck
you.
yeah. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
That is this week in the Lakeville Journal. Once again, tricornernews.com.